people like you don't stay here." Rebecca Sloane's voice was soft, polished, and sharp enough to cut through the marble lobby of the Carter Grand. Naomi Carter stood on the other side of the front desk, one hand resting on the handle of a rain-speckled suitcase, the other holding a printed reservation that had been confirmed less than an hour earlier. Around them, crystal lights glowed above cream-colored floors, a pianist played near the lounge, and travelers moved through the hotel wrapped in expensive coats and quiet confidence. Then the room changed. Conversations thinned. A bellman stopped beside a brass luggage cart. A couple near the elevators turned just enough to watch without appearing to stare. Rebecca slid Naomi's driver's license back across the counter with 2 fingers, as though even touching it had been an inconvenience. "There is no reservation under that name," she said. Naomi looked at the computer screen reflected faintly in the mirror behind the desk. She had seen her name there moments ago. Naomi Carter. 1 room. 1 night. Executive floor. Now the line was gone. Not marked cancelled. Not moved. Gone. "Check again," Naomi said. Her voice stayed calm, but something inside her had gone still. Rebecca's smile tightened. "I already did." Naomi glanced toward the lobby entrance, where rain streaked the tall glass doors and headlights swept across the wet pavement outside. She had spent 6 hours traveling to reach this hotel, but she had not come because she needed a place to sleep. She had come because 3 black guests had filed complaints in the past month, each describing the same pattern: missing reservations, suspicious questions, unexplained cancellations, and security called before management. The reports had reached the corporate office. They had not reached Rebecca. That was intentional. Naomi had arrived alone, without an assistant, without a driver, and without the tailored suits she wore in board meetings. Tonight, she wanted to know how this hotel treated a guest who appeared to have no power. She was beginning to understand. Rebecca tapped one manicured nail against the counter. "There are other properties near the airport," she said. "They may be more suitable." The nearest airport was 12 miles away. Naomi let the word suitable hang between them. "My confirmation number is on the page," she said. "Please enter it." Rebecca did not look down. Instead, she studied Naomi's simple charcoal coat, the old leather suitcase, and the water darkening the edges of her shoes. "We are fully committed tonight." Behind her, the lobby display still advertised rooms available. Naomi slowly placed the confirmation sheet flat against the white marble. "Then explain why your system showed my reservation when I arrived." For the first time, Rebecca's expression shifted. It lasted less than a second, but Naomi saw it, a flicker of alarm beneath the practiced hospitality. Rebecca reached below the desk. "I'm going to ask you to step away from the counter." Naomi did not move. "Before I do, call your general manager." "He is unavailable." "Then call corporate." Rebecca's eyes cooled. "Ma'am, you are creating a disturbance." The pianist continued playing, but the lobby no longer felt elegant. It felt watchful. Naomi heard the faint click of a radio behind the desk. A young bellman named Ethan Cole looked toward Rebecca, then toward the screen, his face tightening as if he had noticed something he was not supposed to see. Naomi followed his gaze. On the lower corner of Rebecca's monitor, a small message flashed and disappeared, reservation deleted manually. Naomi lifted her eyes. Rebecca had not made a mistake. She had made a decision. And somewhere above them, 40 floors of glass and steel waited for a woman the staff believed had not yet arrived. For 3 years, Naomi had owned the Carter Grand without ever needing the building to announce her name. She had signed the final acquisition papers in a quiet conference room in Atlanta, watched the old hotel logo come down, and kept the original brass key from the day the property became hers. The purchase had not been vanity. Her father had once worked overnight maintenance in a hotel where guests rarely learned his name, and Naomi had grown up hearing how dignity could disappear behind polished doors. When she rebuilt the Carter Grand, she promised herself that no guest would be made to feel smaller because of their clothes, their accent, or the color of their skin. That promise was the reason she had arrived without warning. She had left New York that afternoon after reviewing the latest complaint, boarded a delayed flight, and reached downtown just after 9 in the evening. Her mother was recovering in Baltimore after a difficult winter, and Naomi had spent most of the past 2 months moving between hospital visits and corporate meetings. She was tired enough to feel the weight in her shoulders, but not tired enough to miss the look Rebecca had given her when she approached the desk. It was not confusion. It was calculation. Naomi kept her eyes on the monitor. The deleted reservation notice had vanished, but the glow of the screen reflected across Rebecca's face. Ethan shifted beside the luggage cart. He looked barely 25, with a navy uniform jacket that seemed one size too large and a silver name tag pinned slightly crooked. "Miss Sloane," he said carefully, "I saw the reservation when she checked in." Rebecca turned toward him without moving her smile. "You are mistaken." Ethan swallowed. "It had executive access." "Return to the entrance." His hands tightened around the brass rail of the cart. Naomi noticed the silence around them deepen. The guests in the lounge were listening now, even those pretending to study their phones. Rebecca picked up the desk telephone and pressed a single button. "Security assistance at reception," she said. Then she looked at Naomi. "This is your final opportunity to leave voluntarily." Naomi felt no surprise. Only confirmation. The same words appeared in 2 complaints filed weeks apart. Final opportunity. Leave voluntarily. Language designed to make exclusion sound like procedure. "I would still like the general manager," Naomi said. "And I would like the reservation record preserved." Rebecca gave a short, humorless laugh. "There is no record to preserve." Naomi reached into her coat pocket and touched her phone. One message would alert the legal team upstairs. One call would end the performance instantly. But ending it now would answer only what Rebecca did. When challenged, Naomi needed to know what happened next, when a guest had no title to protect her. She withdrew her empty hand. Near the elevators, a pair of silver doors opened and closed without anyone stepping out. 40 floors above, the board expected Naomi at 10 o'clock for the final vote on the company's largest expansion in a decade. Michael Bennett had already sent 2 messages asking whether her car had arrived. Naomi ignored them. At the desk, Rebecca leaned toward the security radio again, but a different voice answered from the lobby entrance. "Police are already here." Naomi turned. 2 uniformed officers had just walked through the revolving doors, rain shining on their shoulders, and Rebecca's expression softened with relief before either man asked what had happened. Officer Daniel Mercer entered first, broad-shouldered and composed, with the practiced confidence of someone accustomed to being believed before he spoke. His partner, Officer Lucas Reed, followed half a step behind, younger, quieter, and already scanning the lobby with cautious eyes. Rebecca moved toward them as if she had been waiting for rescue. "Thank goodness," she said. "This woman refuses to leave." Mercer looked at Naomi, then at the suitcase beside her, then back at Rebecca. He did not ask for the reservation. He did not ask whether Naomi had threatened anyone. He simply placed one hand near his radio and said, "Ma'am, step away from the desk." Naomi held his gaze. "On what grounds?" Mercer's expression hardened slightly, as though the question itself were disrespectful. "Management has asked you to leave private property. Management deleted my confirmed reservation." Rebecca released a small breath of disbelief. "That is not true." Ethan looked down at the floor. Naomi saw the conflict in his face. He had witnessed the screen. He had spoken once and had been silenced. Mercer turned to Rebecca. "Do you want her trespassed?" "Yes," Rebecca replied immediately. "She is causing a scene and making guests uncomfortable." The words settled over the lobby like cold dust. Naomi glanced around. The guests did not look uncomfortable because of her. They looked uncomfortable because they were watching something they understood but did not want to name. A white-haired man near the lounge lowered his newspaper. A woman holding a shopping bag frowned toward the desk. The pianist had stopped playing, leaving the final note suspended in the air. Mercer stepped closer. "I need identification." Naomi handed him the same driver's license Rebecca had returned. He studied it longer than necessary. "Naomi Carter," he read. "Where are you staying tonight?" "Here." Rebecca shook her head. "She is not a guest." Naomi looked past Mercer at the entrance. Rainwater traced silver lines down the glass. She could see her own reflection between the officers, small and steady against the bright lobby. Ask her to pull the deletion log, Naomi said. Every reservation change is time-stamped. Rebecca's face tightened. You do not have access to our internal procedures. I know enough to request evidence before being removed. Mercer handed back the license. You are not in a position to make requests. Naomi felt the old sentence beneath his words, the one generations of people had heard in offices, stores, terminals, and courtrooms. Know your place. She kept her voice even. Is your body camera recording? Mercer glanced down at the device clipped to his uniform. That is not your concern. It becomes my concern when you act without checking the facts. Reed shifted beside him. His camera light was blinking red. Mercer's was dark. Naomi noticed Rebecca notice it too. For the first time, the manager's confidence returned completely. She folded her hands at her waist. Officer, I have already explained everything. She presented a questionable reservation, became argumentative, and refused to leave. Questionable in what way? Reed asked. Rebecca paused. Mercer looked at him. We have enough. No, Naomi said softly. You have her conclusion. You do not have the facts. Mercer turned back to her. Last warning. Ethan raised his head. His voice trembled, but it carried across the silent lobby. The reservation was there. Rebecca stared at him. Ethan. I saw it, he continued. Executive floor. Confirmed. Then it disappeared after Miss Sloane opened the management panel. Rebecca's face went pale before anger replaced it. You are finished here. Ethan swallowed, but he did not look away. Naomi felt something shift in the room. Not justice yet. Only the first crack in a wall built from certainty. Mercer reached for his radio. Rebecca moved toward the computer, one hand hovering near the keyboard. Naomi slipped her phone from her coat and typed 4 words to the legal director waiting upstairs, preserve every camera feed. Naomi pressed send, then slipped the phone back into her coat before Rebecca could see the screen. The message traveled 40 floors upward while the lobby remained frozen around her. Mercer stepped closer, his voice lower now. Put the phone away and cooperate. Naomi did not move. I have cooperated. I provided identification. I provided a confirmation number. I asked for the reservation log. You have checked none of it. Reed glanced toward the front desk computer. It would take less than a minute to verify. Mercer's jaw tightened. Management says there is no reservation. Management is the subject of the complaint, Naomi replied. Her words were calm, but they landed with enough force to turn several heads near the elevators. Rebecca moved quickly behind the desk and placed both hands on the keyboard. There is no complaint. There is only a disruptive woman refusing to leave. Ethan took one step forward. Do not touch the record. Rebecca looked at him as though he had crossed an invisible line. You are no longer employed here. The sentence came out smooth and immediate. Ethan's face lost color, but he stayed where he was. Naomi watched him steady himself against the luggage cart. Courage rarely looked dramatic in real life. Sometimes it looked like a young man in an oversized uniform choosing not to look away. The system keeps an audit trail, he said. Deleting the reservation will not erase who deleted it. Rebecca's fingers stopped above the keys. Mercer turned toward Ethan. Stay out of this. He is a witness, Naomi said. And you are attempting to silence him before reviewing the evidence. Mercer faced her again. You do not get to direct this investigation. There is no investigation, Naomi replied. There is only an assumption wearing a badge. A quiet murmur moved through the lobby. Reed looked down at his recording camera, then back at Mercer. The red light continued blinking. Mercer noticed. He reached toward his own camera and activated it with a sharp press. Naomi heard the faint electronic tone. Good, she said. Now state the reason you are removing me. Mercer exhaled through his nose. You were asked to leave private property. After my reservation was manually deleted. That is your claim. Then ask Rebecca to open the deletion log. Rebecca stepped away from the computer. I will not expose private guest information in a public lobby. Naomi's eyes moved to the display behind the desk, where room availability, dining hours, and promotional rates rotated across a large screen. You were willing to discuss my supposed lack of a reservation in front of everyone, she said. Privacy became important only when the record could contradict you. Rebecca's expression hardened. Officer, please remove her. Mercer lifted his radio. Dispatch, confirm transport availability. Reed turned to him. Daniel, we should verify first. Mercer ignored him. Naomi felt the tension gather, not loud, but heavy, like pressure before a storm. She looked toward the bank of elevators. Above the doors, the numbers began descending. 40. 38. 35. The legal director had received her message. Rebecca followed Naomi's gaze and frowned. Ethan noticed too. What is happening upstairs? Rebecca asked. Naomi did not answer. She stepped back from the counter on her own and placed both hands where the officers could see them. Before you do anything else, she said, looking directly at Mercer's camera, I want the record to show that I asked for evidence, requested management, and identified a witness. Mercer's face remained firm, but uncertainty had entered his eyes. The elevator numbers continued falling. 22. 18. 14. Rebecca reached for the desk phone, but it rang before she touched it. The sound cut through the lobby with startling clarity. She picked up. Front desk. Her posture changed as she listened. The confidence drained from her shoulders. Yes, Mr. Bennett, she said quietly. Naomi watched her grip the receiver tighter. Then Rebecca looked across the marble counter at the woman she had tried to erase, and for the first time that night, fear replaced contempt. Rebecca listened without speaking, her eyes fixed on Naomi as if the woman before her had become someone entirely different while standing in the same place. Yes, Mr. Bennett, she said again, but her voice had lost its polished edge. There has been a misunderstanding. Naomi heard the word and felt something cold settle beneath her ribs. Misunderstanding was the language people used when they wanted harm to sound accidental. Mercer lowered his radio slightly. Reed watched Rebecca with growing suspicion. Ethan remained beside the luggage cart, dismissed but not gone, his hands still wrapped around the brass rail. No, Rebecca said into the phone. She has not been taken anywhere. Her eyes flicked toward Mercer. The officers are handling it. A pause followed. Then Rebecca straightened so quickly that the receiver cord pulled tight. Right now. The elevator display reached 6. Naomi could hear the machinery behind the walls, a low mechanical hum drawing closer. Rebecca covered the mouthpiece and looked at Mercer. Mr. Bennett is coming down. He says no one is to leave. Mercer's expression shifted. Who is Bennett? The general manager. Naomi said nothing. She could feel every eye in the lobby turning toward the elevators. Rebecca returned to the call. Of course. I understand. But she did not understand. Not yet. The doors opened on the 4th floor, then continued downward. Naomi glanced toward Ethan. Did you see her delete the record yourself? She asked. He nodded. Yes, ma'am. Do you know whether the security system records the front desk monitors? The overhead camera catches most of the screen. Rebecca lowered the telephone. You are not authorized to discuss internal systems. Ethan looked at her, his face pale but steady. You fired me. The words were quiet, almost gentle. They left Rebecca with nothing to threaten. Mercer stepped between Naomi and the desk. Until management arrives, you need to remain where you are. I have been standing here the entire time, Naomi replied. You are the one who called for transport. Reed looked toward Mercer. We should cancel that request. Mercer did not answer. Naomi could see the argument moving behind his eyes. He had arrived expecting a simple removal. Now there was a witness, a deletion log, a recording camera, and a general manager descending at full speed. Still, pride held him in place. Ma'am, he said, turn around and place your hands behind your back. The lobby seemed to inhale. Naomi did not move. She looked directly at the red light on his body camera. Am I under arrest? You are being detained while we clarify the situation. For refusing to leave a hotel where I had a confirmed reservation. For failing to comply with a lawful request. A request based on information you refused to verify. Mercer's face tightened. Turn around. Naomi slowly set her purse on top of the suitcase. She understood that resisting would allow everyone involved to stop discussing the missing reservation and start discussing her reaction. That was how the story could be rewritten. She would not give them that escape. She turned toward the glass entrance and placed her hands behind her back without argument. The polished floor reflected her silhouette beneath the chandelier light. Outside, rain slid down the windows in long silver lines. Mercer reached for his restraints, but before he could continue, a small voice came from near the elevators. Mom, why are they doing that to her? Naomi turned her head. A black girl no older than 8 stood beside a woman holding 2 overnight bags. The child wore a yellow raincoat and clutched a stuffed rabbit against her chest. Her mother pulled her closer, but the girl kept watching Naomi. Did she do something bad? She whispered. No one answered. The question moved through the lobby more powerfully than any accusation. Naomi looked at the child and saw fear taking shape where safety should have been. She thought of every guest who had entered this building hoping to be welcomed and instead learned to make themselves smaller. She gently shook her head. No, sweetheart, she said. I asked them to check the truth. The girl looked up at her mother. Can they do that to us too? Naomi felt the words strike deeper than the humiliation, deeper than Rebecca's contempt, deeper than Mercer's refusal to listen. She turned back toward the elevator just as the display reached the lobby. A clear chime sounded. Rebecca stepped away from the desk. Mercer paused. The silver doors opened, and Michael Bennett emerged with the corporate legal director, 3 board members, and a security supervisor carrying a tablet. Michael saw Naomi standing with her hands behind her back. The color left his face. Chairwoman Carter, he said, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. What have they done? For one suspended second, no one in the lobby moved. The rain kept sliding down the glass doors. The chandelier light remained warm and golden. Yet the room felt suddenly colder, stripped of every polite illusion it had held moments before. Mercer looked from Michael Bennett to Naomi, then back again. His hand lowered from the restraints. Rebecca gripped the edge of the desk as if the marble beneath her had shifted. Chairwoman, she repeated, barely above a whisper. Michael crossed the lobby quickly, but Naomi lifted one hand before he reached her. Stop, she said. Her voice was not loud, but the room obeyed. She turned first toward the little girl in the yellow raincoat. The child still held the stuffed rabbit close to her chest, eyes wide and uncertain. Naomi lowered her hands and softened her expression. You belong here, she said. Do you understand me? The girl nodded slowly. Her mother placed a hand over her mouth, fighting tears she did not want strangers to see. Naomi looked back at Michael. Do not explain who I am yet. His face tightened with confusion. Miss Carter, they were about to detain you. I know. She turned toward Mercer. His body camera still showed a red light. Officer, what changed? Mercer opened his mouth, then paused. New information was presented. My name changed nothing. My ownership changed your behavior. Reed lowered his gaze. Rebecca found her voice. This has been a terrible misunderstanding. If you had identified yourself properly, none of this would have happened. Naomi looked at her for a long moment. I identified myself with a valid license and a confirmed reservation. Rebecca's lips parted, but no answer came. The security supervisor stepped forward with the tablet. The camera feeds are preserved, he said. The front desk screen is visible in the overhead recording. The system log also shows a manual deletion at 9:17 this evening. Rebecca stared at him. That does not prove intent. No, Naomi said. Your actions after the deletion will show intent. Ethan stood beside the luggage cart, still pale from the threat of losing his job. Naomi turned to him. Thank you for speaking when silence would have been easier. He gave a small nod, unable to hide the relief in his eyes. Around them, the lobby remained quiet. No one checked a phone. No one returned to a conversation. Even the pianist sat motionless, hands resting above the keys. Naomi could hear the soft hum of the ventilation system and the faint ticking of rain against the windows. She looked down at the marble beneath her feet. Her father had once polished floors like these after midnight, when wealthy guests slept above him and managers spoke through him as if he were furniture. He had taught Naomi never to confuse gentleness with surrender. Kindness, he had said, should make people braver, not easier to mistreat. Michael stepped closer. The board is waiting upstairs. Naomi looked toward the elevator, then at the mother and daughter near the doors. They can wait. She removed her charcoal coat and placed it over the handle of her suitcase. Without the coat, the simple black suit beneath it carried no logo, no visible proof of rank, nothing Rebecca would have respected an hour earlier. Naomi faced the staff behind the desk. I came here because guests reported a pattern. I hope the reports were wrong. Rebecca's face had gone still. You planned this? I plan to observe, Naomi replied. You made the rest of the choices. Mercer shifted his weight. Miss Carter, I apologize for the confusion. Naomi met his eyes. You are not apologizing for confusion. You are apologizing because witnesses arrived. The words settled into the silence. Mercer looked at the red camera light, and for the first time that evening, he seemed to understand that the device had not protected his authority. It had preserved his decisions. Naomi turned toward the child again. The girl had loosened her grip on the stuffed rabbit. Her shoulders were no longer drawn tightly toward her ears. That small change mattered more to Naomi than the fear on Rebecca's face. She stepped beside the front desk and looked at the empty line where a reservation had once appeared. Restore the record, she said. The security supervisor touched the tablet. A moment later, Naomi Carter returned to the screen. Confirmed. Executive floor. Owner authorization. Rebecca watched the name reappear, bright and undeniable, while the lobby finally understood that the woman they had tried to remove had never needed permission to enter. The name on the screen did more than restore a reservation. It rearranged the entire room. Rebecca stepped backward from the terminal as though the glowing letters had become an accusation. Mercer's posture changed, not dramatically, but enough for Naomi to see the certainty leave him. Reed looked toward the security supervisor, then toward Ethan, and finally back at Naomi with an expression that carried both regret and recognition. Michael Bennett turned to the board members behind him. The meeting is suspended, he said. Everything related to tonight is now under formal review. One of the directors, a gray-haired woman named Helen Foster, stared at the monitor. The audit began before Chairwoman Carter arrived, she said. The system has been preserving every change since 8 o'clock. Rebecca's face tightened. I followed procedure. Naomi looked at the timestamp beside the restored reservation. 9:17 in the evening. The exact minute Rebecca had decided that Naomi did not belong. Then the procedure will speak for itself, Naomi said. The security supervisor tapped the tablet and opened the front desk activity record. A series of entries appeared. Reservation accessed. Guest profile reviewed. Executive. Access confirmed. Reservation manually cancelled. Reason code left blank. Override performed by Rebecca Sloan. The facts sat there without anger, without commentary, and without mercy. Rebecca drew in a shallow breath. There must be context. Ethan looked at her. The context is that she showed you her confirmation. Rebecca turned sharply. You do not understand the pressure of managing this desk. I understand what I saw, he replied. His voice was steadier now. Naomi noticed that courage had changed him in less than 20 minutes. He still looked young, still looked frightened, but he no longer looked small. Michael took the tablet and reviewed the record himself. Why was the reservation cancelled? He asked. Rebecca's eyes moved toward the officers. I believe the payment method might be fraudulent. Did the system flag it? No. Did the bank decline it? No. Did you contact fraud prevention? Rebecca said nothing. Helen Foster stepped closer. Did you ask any other guest tonight to prove they could afford their room? Rebecca's silence answered before her mouth could. Naomi looked toward the lounge. Several guests had remained, unwilling to leave before the truth became complete. A man near the piano lowered his eyes. The woman with the shopping bag shook her head slowly. Near the elevators, the little girl in the yellow raincoat still watched. Naomi wanted her to see something beyond exposure. She wanted her to see consequence. Show the earlier complaints, Naomi said. Michael hesitated. Here. Here. The legal director opened a secure folder on the tablet. 3 incident reports appeared, each filed by a black guest within the previous month. Missing reservation. Unusual identification demand. Security called before management. In 2 cases, Rebecca had been the supervisor on duty. In the third, one of her assistant managers had followed the same pattern. Rebecca stared at the reports. Those situations were different. Different guests, Naomi said. Same outcome. Mercer shifted beside her. His camera continued recording. Ms. Carter, our department was responding to a call from the property. Naomi turned to him. And when you arrived, you accepted one person's version before reviewing any evidence. I was trying to keep the peace. Peace for whom? Mercer looked away. Reed removed a small notebook from his pocket. I will document that no verification was completed before detention was requested, he said. Mercer looked at him sharply, but Reed continued. I will also document the witness statement and the system record. Naomi saw the second crack widen. Authority was no longer moving in one direction. Michael faced Rebecca. Turn over your badge and step away from the desk. Rebecca stared at him. You cannot be serious. I am. After 14 years. 14 years does not erase what happened tonight. Rebecca looked toward Naomi, searching perhaps for sympathy, perhaps for hesitation. You are going to destroy my career over one mistake. Naomi held her gaze. No. Your choices created the record. The review will decide the rest. The distinction mattered. Naomi would not become careless simply because she had power. She would not imitate the people who had judged her without evidence. But she would not confuse fairness with avoidance. Michael called the assistant manager forward, then stopped when the security supervisor quietly showed him another log entry. The assistant manager had accessed the same complaint files 3 days earlier and marked them resolved without contacting the guests. Helen read the entry twice. This was not one person, she said. Naomi looked across the front desk, at the staff members who had watched, participated, or remained silent. The hotel had not failed because one woman carried prejudice. It had failed because a system had learned to protect it. Close the desk for internal review, Naomi said. Move every arriving guest to the east reception area. Preserve all records from the past 6 months. Contact every person who filed a complaint. Michael nodded. Rebecca slowly removed her name badge. The small piece of metal clicked against the marble when she set it down. No one spoke. The sound was quiet, but final. Rebecca's badge rested on the marble between them, catching the light from the chandelier. For 14 years, it had opened doors, ended arguments, and carried the authority of the hotel's name. Now it looked small. Michael Bennett signaled to the security supervisor, who stepped beside Rebecca without touching her. You will be escorted to the administrative office while the review begins, Michael said. Rebecca looked at Naomi again. I said there was a misunderstanding. Naomi's expression did not change. You said that after you learned who I was. Rebecca opened her mouth, but the answer never came. She turned away from the desk and walked toward the side corridor, her footsteps sharp against the floor. 2 assistant managers were asked to surrender their access cards after the records showed that they had closed guest complaints without investigation. Neither protested. The certainty they had worn earlier had disappeared, leaving only the sound of plastic cards placed one by one on the counter. Mercer remained near the lobby entrance. Reed stood several feet away, writing steadily in his notebook. The difference between the 2 officers had become clear. One was still protecting his pride. The other was beginning to protect the truth. Naomi faced Mercer. Your department will receive the preserved video, the call recording, and the body camera footage. Mercer folded his arms. That decision is above my rank. So was deciding I did not deserve verification. His eyes lowered for a moment. I should have checked the facts. It was not a complete apology, but it was the first honest sentence he had spoken. Naomi nodded once. Then write that in your report. Reed looked up. I will make sure it is included. Mercer glanced at his partner, then reached for his radio and cancelled the transport request. His voice sounded smaller than it had when he entered. Michael turned toward Ethan, who still stood beside the luggage cart as if uncertain whether he was allowed to move. Your termination was not authorized, Michael said. You are reinstated immediately. Ethan shook his head. I do not want to go back to pretending none of this happened. Naomi stepped closer. You will not have to. She asked him how long he had worked at the Carter Grand. 11 months, he said. And how many times have you seen a guest treated this way? Ethan hesitated. More than tonight. The answer moved through the lobby like a shadow. Naomi did not look surprised. Tomorrow morning, you will meet with the legal team and describe everything you remember. After that, I want you considered for the management training program. Ethan stared at her. I am a bellman. Tonight, you were the only employee who understood what leadership required. His eyes filled, but he blinked quickly and straightened his crooked name tag. Near the elevators, the mother in the raincoat approached with her daughter. We were supposed to check in, she said carefully. I understand if the desk is closed. Naomi looked at the child, who still held the stuffed rabbit beneath one arm. What is your name? Ava, the girl said. Ava, your room will be ready. Naomi led them toward the east reception area herself. Michael followed, but she raised a hand. I can carry one bag. The mother tried to object, but Naomi lifted the smaller suitcase before she could. It was not a performance. It was a correction. She wanted the child to remember that power could kneel, listen, and serve. At the temporary desk, Naomi watched a new employee verify the reservation, explain the amenities, and hand Ava a key card. The process took less than 2 minutes. No suspicion. No raised voices. No threat. Just hospitality. Ava looked at Naomi. Are you the boss? Naomi smiled gently. I am responsible for what happens here. The girl considered that answer. Then you should make sure nobody gets scared again. Naomi looked across the lobby at the abandoned badge, the officers, the preserved cameras, and the staff waiting for instructions. That is exactly what I am going to do, she said. Michael asked whether she still wanted to attend the board meeting. Naomi glanced at the clock above the concierge desk. It was nearly 10:30. Bring the board down here. Here. They need to see what their policies look like from the lobby. Within minutes, the directors gathered beside the front desk while guests moved around them. Naomi presented no speech. She showed them the deleted reservation, the unresolved complaints, and the silence that had allowed both to continue. Then she issued 3 decisions. Every employee involved would be removed pending formal review. Every prior complaint would be reopened by an outside firm. Every hotel in the company would begin independent discrimination audits within 30 days. Helen Foster nodded. This will be expensive. Naomi looked toward Ava disappearing into the elevator with her mother. So is losing the right to call ourselves a place of welcome. No one argued. The board approved the measures there in the lobby, standing on the same marble where Naomi had been treated like an intruder less than an hour earlier. Justice did not arrive with applause. It arrived through records, accountability, and choices that could no longer be hidden. By midnight, the Carter Grand had changed in ways no renovation could have achieved. The front desk was operating from the east reception area, every arriving guest was being welcomed by name, and the sealed records from the previous 6 months were already on their way to an independent investigator. Rebecca Sloan and the 2 assistant managers were formally dismissed after the preserved footage confirmed a pattern of discrimination, false complaint closures, and deliberate misuse of hotel procedures. Officer Daniel Mercer was placed on administrative leave while his department reviewed the body camera recording, the dispatch call, and his refusal to verify Naomi's reservation. Officer Lucas Reed submitted a complete report that included Ethan's witness statement and the exact moment the reservation had been manually deleted. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was softened into a misunderstanding. Naomi remained in the lobby long after the board members left. The rain had stopped, leaving the windows dark and clear. Staff moved quietly across the marble, but the silence no longer felt watchful. It felt honest. Ethan approached wearing the same oversized navy jacket, though his crooked name tag had finally been straightened. "The legal team scheduled my interview for 8 tomorrow morning," he said. "I will be there." Naomi nodded. "Tell them everything, even the moments that seemed small." Ethan looked toward the front desk. "I should have spoken sooner." "You spoke when it mattered," Naomi said. "Courage is not always arriving first. Sometimes it is refusing to stay silent one moment longer." He carried those words with him as he returned to the entrance. In the weeks that followed, the investigation reached beyond one hotel. Former guests were contacted and compensated. Managers across the company were required to review complaint records with outside auditors. Anonymous reporting systems were created for both employees and guests. Ethan entered the management training program, where his first proposal was simple: no reservation could be manually cancelled without a recorded reason and a second employee's approval. The board adopted it across every property. Mercer's department later confirmed that he had violated policy by failing to investigate before attempting removal. His disciplinary record became part of mandatory training on biased assumptions and evidence-based response. Naomi did not celebrate his punishment. Accountability was not revenge. It was the boundary that protected the next person. 1 month later, Naomi returned to the Carter Grand just before sunrise. This time, no board waited upstairs. No cameras followed her. She walked alone through the lobby, where a new brass plaque had been installed beside the entrance. It read, "Every guest enters with dignity." The words were not a slogan. Beneath them was a public commitment explaining how complaints would be investigated and how staff would be held responsible. Near the elevators, Ava stood with her mother, preparing to leave after another weekend stay. The little girl wore the same yellow raincoat and carried the same stuffed rabbit. When she saw Naomi, she smiled and ran toward her. "Nobody was scared this time," Ava said. Naomi crouched to meet her eyes. "That is how it should always be." Ava reached into her pocket and handed Naomi a small paper key card she had decorated with a gold marker. Across the front, in uneven letters, she had written, "You belong here too." Naomi held it carefully. For the first time since that night, the weight in her chest lifted completely. She watched Ava and her mother step through the glass doors into the pale morning light. Behind them, Ethan welcomed an older black couple at the desk, checked their confirmation, and handed over their room keys with a warm smile. No suspicion. No delay. Just respect. Naomi placed Ava's handmade card beside the original brass key she carried in her purse. One had opened the hotel. The other reminded her why it needed to remain open to everyone. Kindness had not made her weak that night. It had given her the discipline to seek truth instead of revenge, the courage to protect strangers, and the strength to change a system rather than simply defeat one person. As the lobby filled with morning light, Naomi stepped aside and watched the doors open for the next guest. What would you have done if you had witnessed that moment and speaking up could have cost you everything?